What goes into the specific nature of lower back pain are all these different factors that can affect it. So I've already mentioned sort of like the main four: the movements, the postures, the positions, and the loads. So this would come under the heading of like a mechanical aspect to lower back pain. There is also another aspect, which is genetics, and I'll address genetics first because it is a thing. Genetics do play a part in lower back pain. The only problem that we have, certainly as professionals, is that very rarely do we have them assessed. So very rarely do people go and get a DNA test to understand the genes that are either activating or not activating that are involved in lower back pain. So it's very difficult to know if genetics is playing a role in your lower back pain. What is much easier to know is if there is a mechanical aspect, because it's relatively straightforward to assess someone's mechanics and whether that mechanics aggravates pain or relieves pain. So certainly from my perspective, I spend a lot of time understanding the mechanics of lower back pain. So I look at the spine, I look at the different postures of the spine, I look at the hips and the range of movement of the hips, I look at the muscles of the lower back, mainly the ones that can give symptoms of lower back pain, whether there's trigger points there, whether it's muscle tightness there. Obviously that gets figured out. And also whether the core is unstable as well. Again, what a lot of methods have out there is one of those elements. So you may see someone touting, to overcome your lower back pain, you need to gain range of movement of the hip. Well, did you know that if you've got good range of movement at the hip, you can still have lower back pain? So that method is redundant for anyone who's got good range of movement of the hip. Another person may have another method which is all about core strengthening. But did you know that someone with very good core strength can still have back pain? So now that method is redundant for that person. So if you've got someone with good hip range of movement trying to develop hip range of movement to overcome lower back pain, you can see why that's not working. So what happens is when you start to assess and test all these different things, if you can imagine like a pie chart, and you've got all like from 12 until 1 o'clock is one part of the pie, 1 until 2 o'clock is another part of the pie, all the way around, and you've got these 12, let's just say you've got 12 assessments as a way of describing it, to sort of from 1 to 12 o'clock on a clock. And from 1 until 3 o'clock, those parts of the pie chart are full up. So you've got good range of movement, you've got good core strength. But then when you get to from 6 until 9 o'clock, you've got real deficiencies. And that might be, you've got lots of muscle trigger points, or spine flexion aggravates the spine. What you're starting to see there are the deficiencies in what's missing. So you know you've got good hip range of movement, you know you've got good core strength, but you know your muscles are sort of in that spasmodic state. So they may be tight, there may be trigger points in there which are referring pain to a different part of the body. Sitting posture may be a problem for you, like I talked about earlier. So you can start to see all these different sort of causes of lower back pain. And what we're able to do is, certainly when you get on to the group coaching, what we're able to do is look at all of that. And you go through that as an individual, then we come together as a group and we discuss it, we understand it. We're able to get it from different perspectives because there's different people in the group. So once you've done the webinar, once we've sat and done the webinar, You're then able to sign up to the group training, and then we're able to go through and actually assess all of this. Now, what I do want to say is, now that we've looked at these different factors, there are two underlying common threads to how injuries occur. One is sudden trauma and one is fatigue, or tissue fatigue. I just want to spend a little bit of time explaining that. So a sudden trauma, so any injury will happen when the load exceeds the capacity of the tissue to cope with that load. So in a sudden impact, that impact, if the load is greater, so let's just say you fall, you hit the floor. If the impact of hitting the floor is greater than your vertebra, if the impact of the fall is greater than the capacity of the vertebra to cope with that, you will fracture a vertebra. You will then get lower back pain. So it happened in one moment, the impact was higher than the tissue's capacity and the tissue failed. Now that can happen with a muscle as well. That can happen with a ligament. Discs are slightly different. And when we come on to, well, which we'll do now, let's talk about fatigue as well. So fatigue, or tissue fatigue, can be described as the straw that broke the camel's back. So there are lots of what can be described as micro injuries. So similar to a repetitive strain injury, there are lots of micro traumas or micro injuries that build up. It hits a tipping point and then your back pain occurs. So this is common if, for example, you went to pick up a pen from the floor and you got back pain. That is more than likely the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a build-up of micro traumas or micro injuries in a certain tissue, and then the tissue failed. And all it took was that small little impact that took the capacity or took the load over the tissue's capacity to cope with it. Another way of thinking about that is how you would go about breaking a credit card or snapping a credit card. If you take a credit card and you bend it in half, you don't break the credit card when you break it in half, or when you fold it in half once. But if you continue to flex and extend back and forth, the plastic fatigues. And then if you do that enough times, you will then get failure in the tissue, or you will then get failure in the plastic, and the card will start to snap. Now, this is where genetics can play a role, because some people have let's just say a thicker credit card. So it takes more flexion and extension cycles for that card to break. Some people are able to do that. Some people have, let's just say, a better quality plastic. So again, they may have a thinner plastic, but because of the quality of it, it takes longer for it to fatigue, if that makes sense. So that is those are the two underlying mechanisms for lower back pain happening. Now, obviously, that can come through what I describe as small movement errors. So if you do enough small movement errors, eventually that will build up fatigue in the system. That will create more micro traumas or micro injuries. And if you don't allow those to recover, then you're going to get a problem. So that's how we need to start thinking about our lower back pain. If you can think of any movements, postures or positions that have triggered your pain, or if you've got an example of when your back failed, stick it down in the comments below. And again, we'll try and decipher what the mechanism was, what tissue could be involved. Is it the vertebra? Is it the disc? Is it the muscle? Is it the ligament? And we'll try and think of where a problem could be manifesting itself. And again, that can start to highlight and give you a solution to your problem. So if you like that idea, again, stick that down in the comments section, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel as well, because all of that will help. So to sort of wrap up and summarize, if your back is still hurting, but you've tried everything, then what you've been trying to do is fit your lower back pain to a method. You're not necessarily taking into consideration the specific nature of your lower back pain. And how you can start to do that is come to the understanding that there are many different causes to your lower back pain, and we need to understand where the deficiency is. Is it in the core? Is it in the hip? Is it in muscle trigger points? Is it in the spine itself? All of those different things can help low back pain manifest. And if we can start to fill up those deficiencies, what we should then start to find is lower back pain reducing and then eventually being overcome. That again is what all my coaching is about. It's not about doing those 4 exercises and then your back pain will miraculously go. It's a process of reduction in pain, and then eventually pain is overcome, you're in control of your pain, and then episodes of lower back pain start to reduce, and then eventually they just don't come back. And what you may also find is that over time you may dip in, it's like, oh, I can feel my lower back here. It's nothing too serious, but you can feel it. So you just adjust what you do, it goes away. So again, you're in control of when low back pain starts to come on, and it's just like, no, and I take it away. I just change how I move, I change how I sit, I change exercises that I do, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to this, and I don't want to go on too much in the summary. But yeah, if your lower back pain is hurting, understand the specific nature of your lower back pain, understand your deficiencies and where the pain is potentially coming from those different causes, and then start filling in those gaps, and you will overcome your pain. Again, if you need help with that, go through to the group workshop, which is in the link in the description. Then you can go on to, once you've sat through that, they're like prerequisites to each other. Once you've sat through the workshop and we've talked through that, you can then go on to the group training. And then if you so choose, you don't have to. If you're in the group training, you get a year in the group training. And then if you want to then go on to one-to-one coaching, online coaching after that, then you're welcome to. So yes, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you've learned something new, hit the thanks button. If you've got a comment or a question, leave it down below. And if you want to watch more like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. Many thanks for watching.